Hello, everyone. Let me test the audio first. Can you hear me well? I see we have Envic from Spain and Brent. How are you guys doing? Let me know how can you hear me. Can you hear me well? Not sure if this is working. Let me know if you can hear me. Okay. Okay, you can hear me. And how is it? How is the volume? Is that high or am I low volume? Because I have so many settings on this microphone that it's just crazy. And 16:9. Okay, good. Good. And do I have a delay in the voice? Like if I do this, is it delayed? Because I'm using some NVIDIA broadcast features. Okay, good. Good. Okay, good. How are you guys doing? I do have a topic for this live stream. The last time we went just freestyle answering questions, and it was awesome. I like that. I enjoy it a lot. But I do want to talk about something very specific today. What's up, Chris D from the UK? Yeah, I see we have many people from all over the world. I posted a picture with the list of the countries that we have watching the channel, and it's amazing. And because everyone has different time, um, different uh, time of the day, I wanted to make this stream at a different time just to accommodate for other people who couldn't be on the first stream, on the first live stream. So today I want to talk about TV settings. Let me see if I can, before I start, let me see if I can highlight a comment. I've seen in other live streams that they are able to highlight a comment so you can see it on the screen. Let me see if I can do this. Let me see if I can. So, when I am answering a question, I can have the comment on the live stream. Remember, this is the second time I do this live stream. So I'm not familiar with the things, how things work. So I don't know how to highlight a comment. Like I see the comments here. How can I have the comments on the screen? Is what I would like to do. I know you can see all the comments, but when I am answering a question, I would like to have it here on the screen. Let me see the options that I have. I don't see how. If you know how, let me know. I don't see how to do that. Maybe the live streams that I've seen from other YouTubers, they are using a third-party program for that. I don't know. First stream, okay. After one, okay. So yeah, so let me set the expectations for this live stream. Of course, for all of you who know me, I'm not an expert. Okay, I am not a master TV calibrator. I do not. I'm not ISF certified. I'm just an enthusiast, and what I'm trying to do is just to share some information that might help someone. And what I want is to give you the information that I was looking for when I was, frustrated. When I got this LGC1, I was frustrated with a picture. and I was trying to watch, a bunch of videos about calibration and how to change the settings, and I couldn't find this simple information that can help everyone. And the reason why this is important is because the games are so messed up that it's just beyond belief. Cuban Vincent, Chris D says, I'm like a Cuban Vincent. So I'm not an expert. Vincent, he's a TV calibrator with a lot of experience and a lot of expensive equipment. I am not. So the reason why learning how to change the settings on your TV or your monitor is so important is because the games are so messed up. And let me get accuracy out of the way. How many games on HDR we have that look good? Just as simple as that. Not many. I can count them with one hand. It is terrible. And these companies are not showing me that they care about, the picture quality, and they are not showing me that they are competent when it comes to color grading, because we see on the Xbox conference, for example, we see Starfield, which is like the game. Starfield is the game. Okay, Xbox bought Bethesda. It was because of Starfield, because I think there was rumors that Sony, PlayStation, they wanted to have a Starfield exclusive to the PS5, which is a very bad idea. Exclusivity just needs to die. It's just terrible for everyone. So Xbox spent all this money and all the marketing and for Starfield, and I cannot believe that they release a trailer that looks washed out with black level rays. It looks absolutely horrendous. And this is advertisement. You're trying to show the world that your game looks good. And you release a trailer that looks washed out. How can they don't notice this? It just blows my mind. So I see time and time again the games on HDR looking washed out colors, black level rays, absolutely terrible, one after the other, for one reason or for whatever reason. Is time and time again the same issue. The games look terrible on HDR, and we see this Xbox conference full of washed out games, and they don't notice that. They don't see it. It is incredible, absolutely unbelievable. So when we talk about accuracy, we are talking about the creator's intent. Okay, I don't trust the creators. If they can release a trailer that looks washed out and absolutely horrendous, I don't care about their intent. I care about opening the game and making it look good. Okay, so the creator's intent and perfect accuracy for gaming right at this moment is useless in 99% of the games. Unless you have a game that you open on HDR and just looks absolutely perfect out of the box, there's no accuracy. If you have to be tweaking the black levels just to get a good picture, there's no accuracy. So let's get that out of the way, because I am not an expert. I don't have a color emitter, and if I start talking about how to tweak the settings on the TV, some people might think, oh, but what's the creator's intent? What about accuracy? What are you doing? Increasing the color saturation or the brightness. SDR is supposed to be this bright or this colorful. Let's get that out of the way. So why do I think that this is important? Because you're watching my videos about the LG C1, and you might have other TVs. So if you have the other displays, other monitors. So if you have an LG C1, you can just try my settings and it might look good to you. So problem solved. Okay. But I'm sure you have many other displays at home. And with very simple tweakings on the settings, you can get a much better experience with your display. And this is the information I was looking for when I started learning about this, and I couldn't find it anywhere, and it's so easy. So easy. So before I start, let me read some of the questions to see where we are, some of the comments to see where we are. So we have the greetings to everyone. We have 20 people on the chat this early in the morning. Brazil, we have a lot of people from Brazil. It is ranking very high. So what's up, Manuel Luis Machado from Brazil? We have from California. We have Chris D, 1981. We have Namaskar from Spain. Fendera. We have Simon Hawshock. We have Quat. What's up? So yeah. So let's talk about it, man. If you have a different display, hopefully you have some settings. So let's say I can get a reference monitor. Let's say I get a perfectly accurate reference monitor that just looks like perfect on SDR and perfect on HDR. On HDR, we are talking about no ABL limitations. We're talking about the best, color gamut possible today. All the brightness possible. Would that be enough to just enjoy gaming? No. On SDR, perfect accuracy is not going to be as bright as you are used to. People tell me all the time, I got my LG OLED and it's too dark. And I'm giving them the settings. Hey, use this and this settings, and it's still too dark. And OLED Motion Pro, no way. Many people are like, no way, that just looks too dark. I cannot use that. And with the settings that I've shared with you, you can get brighter than the SDR standards with OLED Motion Pro. And people tell me, no way. A lot of people, no, that's not that's not bright enough. So perfectly accurate SDR works for most games because most games on SDR look okay. They look very good. No problem. It is a rare case where you have to adjust the settings on SDR to get a good picture. Like, to my mind comes Resident Evil Village that has some SDR settings that if you don't adjust, it just looks terrible on SDR. We have Genshin Impact, which is a game that makes billions of dollars. And that game is washed out on SDR. And it is washed out on mobile. Like, I use it on my phone and it is washed out. I was expecting to be blown away with the picture quality on the mobile because it just makes so much money, but it is washed out and it looks terrible. Okay. But it is very rare. So if you have that, fabulous reference monitor for gaming, of course, reference monitors are like 60 hertz. So that's not very good for gaming anyway. But let's say you can get 240 hertz, perfect accuracy on SDR. Most people are not going to like that because it's not going to be bright enough and it's not going to be colorful enough. Okay. So people like it more colorful. So yeah, SDR to make it look good, you're gonna want to juice up the colors and you're gonna want to increase the brightness. Okay. And so there's no accuracy when you do that. Okay. So for SDR, let's start with that. How can you get the best picture quality on SDR on any display? You have to make sure that you are not clipping colors. you want to test on your TV, on your monitor, you want to test increasing the contrast as much as possible before you start getting clipping. How do you test that? Very easy. Open a white test clipping pattern. It's that simple. You open that white test clipping pattern, you have the contrast setting on your TV, and you're going to increase that until you see that you're clipping. So clipping means that, let's say you have a test pattern that is flashing, and you will see that the squares or that thing that is flashing or the columns, they are going to start disappearing. Okay. So you want to increase it as much as possible before you start clipping those whites. Okay. Then you want to go over the color saturation and do the same with a color clipping pattern. So now you need to understand that the contrast and the color depth or the color saturation, they will both clip the colors. So you need to check with the white clipping pattern and with the color clipping pattern. And what you want to test on your TV is you want to see how it looks if you increase the color saturation and the contrast as high as possible before you clip anything. So you want to adjust that as high as possible, and you don't have any clipping on the whites or any clipping on the colors. Okay. You also need to understand, you need to see what are the color gamut settings of your TV, because the color gamut is going to allow the TV to be more colorful. So for example, on these LG OLEDs, we can set the color gamut to auto, and on SDR, that is going to clamp the color gamut. So what that means is that it's going to reduce the color saturation to be all the colors they are inside Rec 709. So you want to, set your TV to that native color gamut on SDR to try to see how that looks. Okay, it's gonna be more colorful, and increase the contrast and the color saturation until max, until you don't get any clipping. So now the second thing to understand is that you can play around with the balance between the contrast and the color saturation. And this works for every single TV. Okay, every single TV is the same thing. This works. All TVs have contrast and color saturation settings, all of them. I mean, there might be one TV that has everything locked. Okay, but all the TVs I've ever seen, they have control over the contrast and the color saturation. So you also want to see and test what happens if you lower the contrast and increase the color saturation instead. So you can play around with this balance, because when you lower the contrast, you are going to be able to increase the color saturation more if you want like a vivid mode. Okay. So you see that color clipping pattern, when you reduce the contrast, you can increase the color saturation more before you start seeing the colors clipping. So there's a video on YouTube that I use. It's very simple. It's called color clipping. And it is a red, a green, and blue flashing. And you open that Rec 709 color clipping pattern. I think that's the name of the video. And you can test those TV settings with that video very easily. So play around with that. If you want it more colorful, lower the contrast, increase the color saturation. If you need more brightness, for example, on this Pioneer Kuro, this plasma TV that I got, I want more brightness. This TV is not lacking color saturation. All the opposite. This TV, the colors are just incredible. It's just so saturated. But I need more brightness. So what I did is I increased the contrast from the default 40. So there's a 40 contrast as the default. If you go beyond that, you start clipping colors. So what I did is I reduced the color saturation below the default so I can increase contrast and get more brightness. And when I do that, the colors are still way more saturated than SDR should be, because the TV is going beyond Rec 709. It has a wider color gamut than what SDR requires. Okay. So now some TVs gives you the option, or some displays, this applies to monitors too, to any monitor. So some displays give you the option to increase or decrease the light output. Like we have OLED light on these OLED displays. So you want to max that out. Okay. So reducing the light output for the sake of accuracy, thinking that, oh, SDR is not supposed to be that bright, doesn't make any sense in my opinion. The reason why we have those SDR standards is because we don't have that brightness available on every single display. Okay. So the content needs to be set up in a way that is going to look good in most displays. So the display you are using might be better than most displays. So why would you reduce the performance of your display just because SDR is supposed to be, 200 nits or 100 nits? That doesn't make any sense. You want to max out the light output of your display. Why? Because it's going to look better. So now the exception might be some LCD screens, because with LCD technology, if you increase the light output, then the blacks, they are worse. So you get worse black levels. So you have to pick your poison. Do you want a brighter picture and worse black levels? You have to try it. You have to see, okay, how high can I go? I see, for example, on my gaming monitor, if I try to get good black levels, the picture quality is very bad. So enjoy an LCD for the best an LCD can do, which is basically that full screen brightness. Enjoy it. So if you try to reduce the brightness too much to get better blacks, the blacks are not gonna be good anyway. The contrast not gonna be good anyway, and the brightness is gonna be low. So, but that's something you have to play around. But if you have a self-emissive display like this OLEDs, you want to max out the brightness, and the higher the brightness, the better the picture quality, regardless of how accurate that is. After you have perfect blacks, the higher you go in brightness, the better the picture quality. Period. There's no question about that. Nobody can deny that. Okay, it might not be accurate, but again, accuracy is the creator's intent, and the creator's intent for SDR is that you want to release a content that looks okay, that looks good in the majority of the displays. If your display is better, you want to get a better picture quality than that. Okay. So for SDR, we usually don't have this black level race issue, but if it happens, you want to see if your TV has that black level control. So on these LG OLEDs, we have a setting that is called black level, or it's called a screen brightness on this LG C1. And you want to lower that. So now, how much do you have to lower that? In my experience, when we have a game that looks washed out, the problem is most likely limited inside full. Okay. So my recommendation is very simple, and this works for everything, for every single game. I've tested this in thousands of gigabytes of games that I have, and especially on HDR, because that's when we get these washed out games. It's very simple. You want to have your TV or your PS5, or ideally you want to test this on a PC, so you have control over the RGB levels, because for example the Xbox doesn't have a full range output as far as I know. The PS5 does have full range output. So if you have limited range and you force limited on the TV, you're gonna get no difference. It's gonna look the same. So my recommendation is this: open a near black test pattern, any near black test pattern on SDR, and hopefully you test with multiple test patterns, or you can just download the pictures and the test patterns that I share with you. Those are the best because it's just a picture with the exact, all the gradients for black and everything. So you want to open that near black test pattern. You want to have full on your GPU on your PC or the PS5 if you can open a picture like that on the PS5. And then you want to force limited range on the TV. So now you don't want to use that. You don't want to just force limited range and play like that, because forcing limited range is going to expand the range. So it's going to fix that washed out colors, and it's going to fix that those raised blacks, but it is also going to clip more the whites. So it's gonna mess up the calibration you did. So you're gonna have more clipping on the whites and on the colors too. So you don't want to force limited, but this is just for testing. You force limited and take a look at that near black test pattern. You will see that the near black test pattern is going to get crushed. You're going to lose details. So now what you want to do is go back to full range and now lower that black level setting of your TV to crush the same amount. So let's say you have, all these columns of gradients on the near black test pattern. You force limited over full and you see half of them disappear, for example. Then you go back to full, you force limited, boom, all of this disappears. Then you go back to full, then you go to the black level control of your TV and you want to lower the black level until you crush the same thing. If you do that, most of the games that look washed out are going to be fixed. And my theory is that these games are not washed out like randomly. Like each game has a different kind of washed out colors. No. In my experience, they all look washed out in the same way. And it's this limited inside full problem. So that's how you do it on any TV. On any TV, you see all this HDR. So let's jump to HDR now, because HDR gets more detail. And before I go into HDR, I'm gonna read some of the comments to see where we are. And if you have any questions about this before I jump to HDR, let me know. So before we jump, we're gonna jump into HDR. This problem with the black levels, I don't see it on SDR. I don't see it happening on SDR. I see it mostly on HDR. And for example, the game that I mentioned, Genshin Impact, you have a calibration screen that is very easy to set up because you have a background that is supposed to be black and it is not. So in that example, if you have a game that has like a gamma slider or something, and usually those calibration screens, they have a black background, hopefully. If you see that, then it's very easy. Just go to the black level setting of your TV and lower it until you get perfect black. So you perfect blacks. So you need to be on a dark room, on a completely dark room. Turn off all the lights, and then you put your nose on the screens just to make sure, especially if you have an OLED with perfect blacks. If you have an LCD, it's gonna be a little bit more difficult to notice these differences, and you might not even realize that the game looks washed out. You put your nose on the screen, you lower the black level until you get perfect blacks. That's what I did on Genshin Impact, for example. And the black level setting on my LGC1 on SDR was very low. I don't remember the number. It was like 38 or something like that. Very, very low. I've never seen any game look more washed out than Genshin Impact on SDR. It was just absolutely terrible. But this problem happens most of the time on HDR. So we're going to jump on HDR. I think I cover the basics for SDR. Very simple. All you have to do on your TV, on your display, is to summarize, max out the color gamut. Why? Because you purchased a more colorful display. Okay, unless there is something very wrong with the calibration, when you when you use that higher color gamut setting, unless everything looks terrible, like you notice that, okay, there's something wrong with this wider color gamut option, I cannot even use it. Unless that's the case, you definitely want to, you know, unleash that native color gamut of your display. That's step number one. Okay. Step number two, max out the light output, especially when you have perfect blacks. That's just going to give you a better picture quality. So if you have an LG OLED, you get the G3, for example, you go to game optimizer mode, the peak brightness is locked on game optimizer mode. You want to use the color control app and change that to high. You want as much brightness as possible. And then all you have to do is to check that you're not clipping colors. You want to control the contrast and the color depth, the color saturation. You want to increase the contrast as high as possible. If you want more brightness, you want to increase the color saturation as high as possible if you want a more colorful picture. Okay. If you increase the contrast to the maximum and the color saturation to the maximum, and that looks too saturated, like an eye candy, then, well, reduce the color saturation. It's that simple. So I would recommend, if that's the case, just increase the contrast and lower the color saturation until you like it. Maybe you like it the way it is by default, and there's nothing wrong with that. But that would be my recommendation. So let me take a look at the chat and see what we are. And I will jump to HDR, which is the most, you know, more complicated. It takes a lot longer to explain the HDR. Okay, let's see what the comments we have. So that we have the greetings at the beginning. I don't. We have Manuel Luis Machado, owner of the channel. I don't remember your name, but I have to thank you. I am with an LG C1 48-inch Evo. Okay, well, I appreciate you. Yeah, if you have an LG C1, you can try the settings that I've shared, and that should look very good. At least it looks very, very good on my TV. But that's why I'm doing this, talking about this topic. Even if you have a different TV, let's say you have a C1, but then you have other TVs at home, you can apply the same tweakings and the same advice, the same things that I've been doing with the C1. You can apply that to any display. That's my point. That even if you have a Sony or a Samsung, a Philips, any display, you can do the same because they are all the same. You can just watch my video and see, okay, I see what he's doing. He's opening this test pattern, he's increasing this and that. Just find the equivalent setting on your own display and do the same thing. Try the same thing. Basically, find the C1 equivalent settings on your own display. That's it. That's my point here. Laser Shark. I returned the C2 and I am looking for an IPS LCD because of the non-RGB subpixel layout of all OLEDs. The text rendering is just awful. Also, some other shapes and edges look bad. Also, the pink tint. Maybe you are more sensitive than me when it comes to text clarity. I don't really use my C1 for work, but I do not see any issues with the text clarity. So now keep in mind that I am using, on a PC, I'm using a full RGB, and I have a high contrast theme on Windows. So all the text for me is red. I have the background is black, and all the text are red. Why? Because that's better for my eyes. It is more refreshing. So I see a lot of people complaining with OLEDs. I see a lot of people complaining about ABL for desktop usage. Okay, of course, ABL is not better for picture quality. I wish we had no ABL. But for desktop usage, just to use the PC, web browsing, all you do work, you don't want a white screen. Why would you want that? So if you are concerned about text clarity of black text with a white background, that just doesn't make any sense. Use a black background and the letters on a different color that's not blue. it's gonna be so much better for your eyes. You're not going to even care about this text clarity issue anymore. Um, so you're saying that text rendering, so text rendering and the edges look back bad in pink tint. So I don't notice pink tint on my 48-inch LGC1. It might have pink tint, but I've seen off-axis full screen pictures of the grayscale, and I don't see like a pink tint. So now we have these metameric problems from the subpixel layout that I still don't understand. What is this metameric problems with WRGB OLEDs? But the thing is that full screen white on my plasma look a lot better than on this WRGB OLED. So yeah, it's not great when it comes to screen uniformity and purity of the colors or something like that. It's not great, but the issue I have with WRGB is that it could be more colorful. If it was RGB with the same brightness, the colors would be better. So if we can get like an inkjet printed OLED uh, with the same brightness, that would look a lot better. That's gonna look much colorful and nicer than these WRGB OLEDs for sure. Let's see what else we have. Beam Beam Up, Scott's P, Laser Shark, get a QD OLED, problem solved. QD OLEDs, I've heard more issues when it comes to text clarity with QD OLEDs because of the fringing, color fringing. They say that it is very noticeable, the color fringing on QD OLEDs. I haven't experienced QD OLEDs for desktop usage, so I cannot say that's the case or not. Um, okay, Luis Machado, he says, I use black level full on the TV and on NVIDIA control panel. Then I use the level effect on reshade and I can achieve beautiful images. Yeah, so reshade is a very good tool to fix the color grading or fix all of that. The problem I have with reshade is that I notice in some games that if I use any of this preset to fix the color grading on reshade, I get black level rays for some reason, and this is in some games. So I share this preset on reshade that is called PROD8003 curved levels, and it works very well to increase the visibility near black if I need to do that on my plasma TV because it's crushing blacks. But in some games, I get raised blacks. Like just by activating the setting. Let's say I don't even change anything on the setting. I'm talking about default. So when you turn on the setting, by default, you have no changes whatsoever. Just by turning the settings on reshade, sometimes I see black level raise. So then that's a no-go. I need to figure it out if it's just that setting or if it's just something that has to do with an issue with reshade. And that might not be visible on LCD screens, but on the OLED, I can clearly see when the black levels get raised. That's one thing that I want to get more experience. I want to learn more about reshade because if I want to help everyone, doesn't matter what display you have, reshade is the best way. Because if I understand how to achieve the same results I can achieve with my C1, with the settings on my LG C1 using reshade, then I can just share those settings. And if you have a Sony TV or anything different, you just apply the preset, boom, you get that black level raise fix, you get the everything adjusted. But it is very difficult on reshade to tweak the settings because you need to enter test patterns on reshade in game, and it's not as simple. It's not as simple, but I will do it eventually. I will become much better with reshade, so I can help more people, and especially gaming monitors. Gaming monitors sometimes they don't have any settings whatsoever. So what I'm talking about here, that it is so important to understand how to tweak the settings For me, a monitor without settings is a no-go. It doesn't matter how good it is. If you get a monitor that have all the settings locked, or you have very limited settings, that's a no-go. It doesn't matter how good it is. And the reason is that we need to have control over those settings to fix the picture if the picture is messed up on the games, especially on on HDR. If you get a monitor that has, or a TV that has no black level control, you cannot enjoy HDR gaming. And it's that simple. The only way is try to fix it with reshade, which I haven't figured out yet, how to fix it exactly the way I want. Especially because of that, the black level gets raised just by using the preset. So that's a big issue that I see. These monitor companies not giving you options to tweak the pictures, and the black and white stabilizer that they are including is not enough. That doesn't work well. I'm always saying I'm gonna do a separate video about black and white stabilizer, and haven't done it yet. Basically, is it doesn't work well. I've never I've tried, that I've tried to take advantage of every single option I have on the TV. The only options I think I haven't been able to ever use to improve anything has been black and the white stabilizer. There's I cannot It doesn't make the picture better in any case on my experience. It just makes the picture quality worse. And that's what, for some reason, that's the settings that they are including on these gaming monitors, these LG Ultra Gear gaming monitors. They have like a black and white stabilizer. I don't know, maybe it works differently on the monitor, but it's just not a good it's not a good setting. I mean, having more options is good, but I don't see the usefulness of that setting, at least on my LG C1. So yeah, let's see what else we have. Simon Hotshot, um, greetings to you. Good to see and hear from you again, sir. You are making huge visual changes for all of us, and I'm very thankful for all your hard work. Well, thank you, Simon. I appreciate it, and I know you have a colorimeter, and you probably know more about calibration than me. But the thing is, with these games, it is not enough to have your display perfectly calibrated. So he, for example, Simon, he has his LG C1 calibrated with equipment, with the proper software, and he realizes it's just not enough. You open the games and they look bad. That's the problem. Hey, what's up, Quad Chris D? But what about contrast to stay with OLED anyway? But I care about contrast, so stay with OLED anyway. Yeah, contrast is the most important attribute of picture quality. I heard that from HDTV Test, and I agree. Contrast. So having perfect black is gonna give you infinite contrast. And yes, after you see those perfect blacks, yeah, that's awesome. I mean, I would know. It would be difficult for me to go back to an LCD TV. Even if they are very good right now. I saw this QN900C from Samsung on the store, and I was very impressed. Of course, it was not on a completely dark room, and of course, I was looking at the black bars, and they have dimming zones, and those black bars are perfectly black because they just turn off all the pixels there. But I liked how that TV looked, but it would be difficult for me to spend a lot of money on a huge LCD after enjoying an OLED. But of course, if they release like a 5,000 nits LCD with very good dimming zones and the blooming control and all of that, it might be enticing, especially because they are cheaper. So yeah, let's see what else we have. Greetings from Portugal. Cristiano Ronaldo. I used to watch European soccer a lot, and Real Madrid was the team that I was following because my brother, he's from the Barcelona, so we used to watch it together, and And yeah, Cristiano Ronaldo when he was playing on the Real Madrid from Portugal. Let's see. I can stand flickering in BF5 at 60 on the C2. Another problem is you have to be 60 FPS locked without VRR. I actually prefer 80, 90 FPS with VRR, no BF5. Yeah, the flickering, the way you perceive the flickering, and I'm going to read some comments, try to catch up, and then I'm going to jump to HDR. The flickering being bothersome, it depends on the person. And I totally understand if you tell me that it is unusable to you because it depends on the person. And the person, the Blurbuster chief told me that basically. So he told me it depends on the person. It's not the way we perceive the flickering is it. You cannot say, you can never say, this is not going to flicker for sure. So you have flickering, you have All Emotion Pro. Let's say we have All Emotion Pro at 100 FPS on the C1. I would say for 99% of the people, I believe you're not gonna see any flickering. But based on what the Blurbuster chief told me, I cannot say that. And yeah, you might still see flickering and it might be bothersome. So I can totally understand 60 BF5 on the C2 might be too flickery for you. The C1 is gonna flicker more. It's gonna flicker more than the C2 at 60 because the pixel visibility time is reduced more. So C2 is like 50% reduction. On the C1 is like 33, 38% based on my testing. And the CX is 25%, which is gonna flicker significantly more. But it's gonna have better motion clarity too. So yeah, it means 80, 90 FPS with VRR is a good experience. It's a good experience. BFI is giving you, if you can get a lock 60, which is another challenge to get a lock 60. Sometimes it's difficult depending if you're on a console or on a high-end gaming PC. But if you can get a lock 60 and use that BFI, that OLED motion on the C2, that is going to give you a more consistent motion clarity. It's gonna look like 120 FPS in motion all the time, very consistent. So I almost never use VRR, almost never. And even if I use VRR, I want to lock the frame rate. So let's say I see that the average frame rate is 110 FPS. And it's most of the time it's 110, but sometimes it drops to 100 and it rarely goes up to 120. I want to lock the frame rate, even if I'm using VRR. So then with VRR, I don't get tearing if the frame rate drops below. But I don't want to have a game that is running sometimes at 120 and then it drops to 90 FPS and it drops to 80 because I notice the difference and is bothersome. It's very, very bad. I try to lower the graphics if I can to get a more consistent frame rate regardless. Lunatic Loomfortic says, watching this on SDR HDR trick. Yeah, those are the settings I'm using now, right now on my LG C1 to do this live stream. But I have, of course, I lower the brightness on Windows because I don't want to strain my eyes. Unless I'm gaming, I'm reducing the brightness. That's nice. That's the way to go. Greetings from Stara Baba. Chris D says, in SDR, I have native gamut, but color depth 45, 55 default. This increases saturation, but skin tones look okay. Okay, so you reduce the color depth to 45. That's what I said. If you think it looks too colorful, lower the color saturation. It's up to you, but it depends on the TV. And I think everyone should try and see how colorful can my TV look before I start clipping colors and making things worse. And then, if you think that's too colorful, then just lower the color saturation. That's what I would recommend. On these WRGB OLEDs, let me tell you my experience. They don't get very saturated when you increase the brightness. So the recommendation I'm giving you, which is basically max out the brightness, you are not going to get a very saturated picture anyway. So it doesn't matter if you max out the color saturation, it's not going to be very saturated. My Pioneer Kuro has some green colors that look significantly more saturated on the C1, even when the brightness is lower. And I cannot get that color saturation. It doesn't matter if I increase the saturation to the maximum. And I don't understand why, because the color gamut of my LG C1 is higher than this Pioneer Kuro Plasma TV. So my recommendation for WRGB OLEDs, just max it out and see how that looks. Maybe if you do that on a QD OLED, it's going to be like wild. It's going to be like, wow, this is too much. Then just lower it. Let's see what else we have. Hi from Brazil. Lunatic says, on my CX, I found out that when you use dynamic tone mapping on, you get the perfect clipping point on the highlights when you do the Windows SDR HDR slider 92% instead of 100. Well, it's very good that you're testing that. I will give it a try. We should always test things. That's why when I share the settings, I don't only tell you, hey, just copy my settings. I explain you why. So in case you have a different display, you can take advantage of that. You can test it on your own display. That's why I explain you why. So the fact that you're testing different options is awesome. That's exactly what you should do. And I'll give it a try. I know that we can reduce the SDR HDR slider on Windows, and we have different tone mapping options. So I'm going to talk about that on HDR when I talk about HDR now. We can reduce that SDR HDR slider on Windows. So what I'm talking about here is when you turn on HDR on Windows, there is an SDR HDR brightness slider. When you max that out, the max CLL of the games on Windows 11, or all the content, all the SDR content, is going to have a max CLL of 540. So max CLL is basically the maximum brightness that the TV is, that the content is trying to output. Okay. Then we have HDR tone mapping options on these LG OLEDs. So we can select, I'm sorry, it's not 540, it's 498. So the SDR HDR slider on Windows 11, when you max that out, the max CLL is 498. Okay. So on the tone mapping options that we have on these LG OLEDs, which you can see by accessing the HDMI signaling override menu. So you go to settings, and then you step on select mode, where you have your picture modes, and you click 111311. You will see this HDMI signaling override secret menu. And then you go over max CLL and mastering pick, and you can select the tone mapping for the TV. So if that slider from Windows is doing 498 max CLL, then we see that the closest tone mapping we have available is 540. Okay, but you can reduce that slider on Windows and change the tone mapping to 400. So you can reduce the SDR HDR slider on Windows and test, so you get 400. How do you test that? Very simple. Take a screenshot of a highlight. You open your game, take a screenshot of the sun, of any bright object, and open that a screenshot with the HDR WCG image viewer app. And that's how you're going to see what is the max CLL. So I'm going to talk about that in depth now when I cover HDR. And yeah, so you can reduce that SDR HDR slider to be 400, tone mapping with 400 on the TV, and that works too. I tested that and it doesn't look as bright. So maxing out the slider looks brighter to me, but it might be better. So yeah, testing is good. Test it on your own TV. Maybe also there might be a difference in the tone mapping calibration of your own TV. Maybe your TV is clipping um, just a little bit, and you're correcting it. That's why testing is the most important thing, just to get the best experience. Alan Solano says, actually, on LG LCD, even the cheaper 4K TVs have the black level control. And if the panel is VA, you get a really good contrast. Yes, from what I've seen, all the LG TVs have the same options, almost the same options, the same settings. I even spoke with a friend that had an LCD LG TV, helping him with the settings and stuff, and accessing the service menu. The numbers were the same. I remember the sub BC option on the service menu, brightness and contrast. It was the same number. Everything was the same. Everything was looking the same. Let me see. So everything's clear. I don't know how to say your name, man. Anvic. I don't know what that means. Namaskar, I think, from Spain. But this name on YouTube is so strange. Sanchez Gaming. How do I add FreeSync to my B9 OLED TV? I have no idea. The B series, I have no idea how good they are or the options that they have available. I don't know. I just have no idea. If someone knows in the chat and can answer this question, if the B9, LG B9, if it has FreeSync, I mean, if it doesn't have the option, I don't think you can add it. But if you have a PC or a console, if you have a console, a lot of games have a locked FPS option. And if you are using it on a PC, just try to get a stable frame rate. That's the best experience anyway. When you lock the frame rate, that gives you the most consistent and the best experience anyway. On streaming, especially Dolby Vision, I always end up turning down black level a notch or two. You need to do that with Dolby Vision discs, says Andreas Bon. I have absolutely no experience with Dolby Vision because there's no games on a PC with Dolby Vision. I think only Mass Effect Andromeda. Gaming Tech told me Mass Effect Andromeda supported Dolby Vision on the PC. I haven't tested it yet, and I don't watch any content. I just watch, I just play games. So I have no experience whatsoever on this TV, on this LG C1. I have never seen Dolby Vision. On YouTube videos, they say Dolby Vision, but they are not. I believe they are not Dolby Vision. So I don't know. And to calibrate Dolby Vision, I have no idea. You need to have test patterns that are Dolby Vision, I guess. So color temperature app will help with any TV. Yes. Actually, let me give the shout out to HD Movie Source YouTube channel that's also focused on AV, and he has been using the color temperature meter app to improve all the TVs that he has. And he's someone who cares about accuracy, and he has his LG C9 professionally calibrated. But here's the thing: to pay for professional calibration, you need to have a TV that is expensive enough for it to be worth it. Otherwise, it doesn't make any sense. Like, you're not going to pay a professional to calibrate a $500 TV. Okay, calibration costs like $500. So that doesn't make any sense. But if you learn how to tweak the settings yourself with the things that I'm talking about, and even using this color temperature meter app, you can get much better result, especially on these cheap TVs. I've been watching HD Movie Source calibrating his TVs, and he has been reporting like amazing improvements from very cheap, Vizio TVs, um, because they are, just by default they look terrible. So using these tips that I'm sharing with you is what I'm saying. Even if you already have your C1, you know, or your LG OLED looking amazing, you can use these tips to improve the rest of the displays you have at home, basically. So yeah, absolutely try that color temperature meter app. So now you have to understand the limitations of this color temperature meter app. You cannot get, perfect accuracy, of course not. And your cell phone camera might be reading the color temperature uh, wrong. Okay, so you might be reading 6500K and it is not actually 6500K. So ideally you want to test if your phone is reading that color temperature, or if you need to calibrate the app. So if you get a light source that is, ISF certified, but you don't have to, don't waste your money, it's not going to be accurate anyway. But if you point a light source that is 6500K to your camera using the color temperature meter app, and you read 6500K, then you know the color temperature is reading correctly. And then you can also see what is the magenta to green balance with that pure 6500K light source. And this was demonstrated by um, Dirt Gary, is another YouTube channel. He was the one that bring up this color temperature meter app. So I got this from him, and I gave him the shout out because he was the one who discovered that. And he proved that his cell phone, uncalibrated, using the color temperature meter app, was accurately reading 6500K. It was perfect, like it is 6500K, perfectly on the dot. So yeah, definitely give it a try. Use that color temperature meter app. I will talk more about that. Chris D, he says peak brightness high does have one side effect on the C2. ABL kicks in. With peak brightness off, you have 180 nits at 100% window size. Maybe. I'm not sure if the C2 can do 180 nits though. I think it's like below 150, maybe 150, but that's okay. I mean, it's just within the margin of error. Yes. So another thing you can do, and this can look more consistent, is to lower the contrast. I think it is like 80. I need to test it again. If you lower the contrast and the brightness enough on SDR, you get no ABL, basically. So that is a more consistent picture quality, because you're not going to get any ABL affecting the when you get a bigger window size, it's not gonna become dimmer. So you can target that, knowing how to change the TV settings. You can target that. You say, okay, I don't want any ABL to kick in. I'm gonna lower the contrast in the OLED light and the peak brightness on off to get a more consistent experience. Yeah, definitely. Try that. That's a good idea. I've tried that myself. The thing is, more brightness always looks better, and ABL is it's not that big of a problem in games. I much rather not have any ABL, but it's not a big deal. So Mo Williams says, I've been using Dolby Vision with your recommendation settings. Looks pretty damn good. Well, there you go. I have no experience with Dolby Vision. If you have washed out colors or raised black on Dolby Vision, and the lowering the black level works the same there, then it's the same problem we have. Same Malik says, would BF5 work on an LG C2 at 60 hertz with D-Blur 10? No, because when you have D-Blur 10 at 60 FPS, you now have 120 FPS. So BF5 on the C2 is actually just inserting a black frame. So you have 60 FPS, 60 hertz. The TV is actually at 120 hertz. And what it's doing, it is inserting a black frame in between those 60 frames. So what happens when you have D-Blur 10? So you have 60 hertz, 60 FPS, D-Blur 10. Let me see if you specified that. Okay, so you have 60 hertz, D-Blur 10. Yeah, so when you have 60 FPS, 60 hertz, and you use D-Blur 10, you now have 120 FPS. If you use OLED motion at the same time, what's going to happen is you're going to get a black frame in between. So maybe those interpolated frames are going to now be black frames. So it's just going to look the same. It's not going to look better. And it might not even look, it's not going to look good at all, because you have now 120 frames. You need 60 frames, you need 60 FPS for that OLED motion to work on the C2. It's not going to even improve the motion clarity. The reason why it works on the C1 and the CX is because C1, G1, CX, GX is because when you use interpolation at 60, you now have 120. And on the C1, if you use OLED Motion Pro Medium, the TV is actually at 240. Okay, so the TV is at 240, and you are getting one black frame in between those 120 frames. Basically, think about it in that way. It's really PWM, but you can think about it in that way with OLED Motion Pro Medium. So, but the C2 and C3, they do not have 240 PWM. They are limited to 120. So you cannot get better than 8 milliseconds of persistence on the C2, C3, G3. So the motion clarity is worse. But the motion interpolation algorithm is better. It's supposed to be better. I haven't seen it, but based on the reviews, they say that the soap opera effect is less noticeable, and it is a much more improved motion interpolation algorithm. But the other day, I was communicating with Gaming Tech, and we were testing the G2 motion interpolation to your question. And he opened the UFO test. And when you have a full screen with a UFO test and you have no background, so you don't have the stars on the background, the motion interpolation algorithm was not being triggered. So it was not even working. So at 60 FPS, 60 hertz, D-Blur 10 was not being triggered with a UFO test with a black background. So you needed to have like an image moving left to right for the motion interpolation artifacts to be for the motion interpolation algorithm to be triggered. Basically, so I did tested that on the G2 with Gaming Tech, but it does work, and it works very well. So let's see what else we have. So Sanchez Gaming says the Dolby Vision from Amazon Fire Stick looks so good. I haven't seen it, man. I have to see it. Dolby Vision. But XX Kills says stay away from Samsung, from a Samsung owner. Tip number 1: stay away from Samsung. Yeah, so I'm in my opinion. So here's the thing. In my opinion, of course, we shouldn't be a fan of any company, or always buy one company and be hate another company. But there might be exceptions. For me, Apple is the exception. So of course, it is not smart to discard a company. Like, for example, Apple is going to release this headset that is a very interesting proposition to me. But because it's Apple, I'm not even going to consider buying that. That's not smart. I should take a look at it and see if it's actually good. But yeah, it's something that we say, oh, I'm not biased towards any company. I want to just get the best. But at the end of the day, yeah, we have our own personal experience with these companies, and we know, or we think we know, that we understand what they can bring to the table and what they are good or bad at. But the reality is that we never know. They might come up with something that's amazing, and we might love it. I have it. I have a phone. My phone is Samsung. It's an S23 Ultra, and it's amazing. I mean, the only reason why I haven't done a review of this phone is because I don't want to, just do a free ad for Samsung, because I don't have anything bad to say about this phone. That's the only. I never reviewed this phone. Never. I said, "Oh, I'm going to do a full review of this phone," and I never did it because I'm not doing a free ad for Samsung. And yeah, that's all there is to it. It is amazing. I cannot recommend it enough. Um, would you do health live streams? I don't think many people are gonna be interested in that. I do have some videos on the channel talking about my diet and what I do, and yeah, not many people like to hear that, because people like to hear good news about their bad habits. That's how it goes. Nobody wants to hear, if you are a smoker, you don't want anyone to tell you you want to you have to stop smoking. Or if you're an alcoholic, you're gonna say just mind your own business. People don't like to hear that what they are doing is bad for them or wrong. So that's not a very popular topic. But yeah, what I do for my health is very simple. I only and exclusively eat whole foods. That's it. I do not eat any salt, no sugar, no oil, no animal products, nothing ultra processed, nothing processed really. Very, very few foods that I eat that are processed, like old fashioned oats, because old fashioned oats is just, boiled, and it has a minimal processing, but it's good. Old fashioned oats, I eat that a lot. But the way I eat is very simple. I get my calories from starches and whole grains mainly. So when you eat all natural foods, it is a challenge to get enough calories to survive and not be hungry. Okay. So the problem for people is that they eat too much, and that's why they are fat, because you're eating too much calories. Okay. The foods that we have available are highly concentrated. Why? Because it tastes better. Okay. So the more calories per bite you have, the more you're going to like it. And it's that simple. So the foods that we have are too concentrated. People get fat because of that. So what I eat is, I don't eat none of that. Starches, whole grains, to get the calories, and then as much fruits and vegetables as possible. And I've been doing that for almost 5 years, and it works amazing for me. I feel fantastic. You've seen me, doing 35 pull-ups in one set. That's insane. I've done exercise my whole life, and when I was in my best shape back in Cuba, when I was in Cuba, I couldn't do 35 pull-ups, not even close. I couldn't do 20. I couldn't. And I can do 35 now without training. No training. And it's because of the diet. What else can be? I'm not doing exercise. It's just my diet. It just works amazing. So I can highly recommend everyone to at least check out, because I'm not an expert, check out Dr. Alan Goldhammer. He has a fasting clinic. So what he does basically is he fixes people's health. So you go there, you have high blood pressure, for example. If you or any family member have high blood pressure, you go to that fasting clinic, and the probability of your high blood pressure to be resolved is 100%. There's not a chance that you go there and your high blood pressure is not resolved. It's that powerful. And he published a study of 140 something people, consecutive patients, that fix their high blood pressure by doing that fasting. And of course, you have to follow up the fasting with a good diet. So that's all I'm going to say about that, because I know it's not a very popular topic. It's off topic. It doesn't have anything to do with what we do on the channel mainly, but I do have some videos about that, and once in a while I might touch on that too. Rufus says, out of all the TVs that are available right now, would you recommend the C1? I have no budget and looking for the best TV, in your opinion, for gaming on PS5. So now you said everything there on the PS5. Myself, I am planning on moving. Okay. If I cannot take the TV and the things that I have with me, I have to sell everything, I move somewhere else, I'm buying a C1 or a G1 again. And I'm probably getting a 77-inch if I can. Okay, if I have the space and if I can afford it, if it's at a reasonable price. So that tells you everything. There is no other display on the market. Let's take price out of the way. Okay, price is not a problem. So even let's include reference monitors, whatever you want on the market. There is no other display that I would rather buy. There's not the LG C1. And the reason is black frame insertion, that OLED Motion Pro High that works at 100 and 120. It works at 60, 100, and 120. It's amazing. And the thing is, I know I can get better motion clarity with some LCD monitors that have backlight strobing, like this new ULMB 2.0 monitors. They do have a lower persistence, but the picture quality, you're not getting perfect blacks there. Okay, so the picture quality that I get on my LG C1 for gaming on the PC with the settings I share with you, it's just amazing. Like I am completely satisfied with that. Like I would like it better for sure, but until they release 480 hertz 4K TVs or monitors that are big size, I'm not going back to a smaller size. That's the other thing. It needs to be as big or bigger than what I currently have. Until we have at least 360 or 480 hertz 4K, what am I going to upgrade? They are not going to do. It seems like black frame insertion at 120 is not coming back. It seems, unfortunately. LG, at least, they're trying to chase brightness, and then they don't realize that they are not going to win. For example, let me make my point. WRGB OLEDs are the limit. Okay, there's not a lot more they can do with it. Maybe they can improve that with a phosphorus blue or something like that versus fluorescent, or they can do something else to improve the brightness. But it's not gonna get a lot better than this. Okay, so they have to realize that they are already they lost in terms of the brightness and the colors, and the G3 can get a little bit brighter than the QD OLEDs, but the color vibrancy, the color brightness is lower. But the feature that they have that the QD OLEDs don't have is OLED Motion Pro. And if I were like the CEO of LG, I would advertise OLED Motion for gamers very heavily. But not only that, I would make sure that when people use that feature, the picture quality is amazing. Okay, and that is possible with the settings that I share with you. You can definitely turn on the feature and see almost no difference whatsoever near black. So you see all the near black details. You see the mid tones, almost no difference on the mid tones, and the only difference you're going to see is on the peak brightness. That's what LG needs to do. If they release, let's say, a G4 LG G4, GeForce. If they release that LG G4 and they put on the box, 4x motion clarity improvements, something like that, 4x better gaming or something like that, they advertise that with good picture quality, okay? Gamers are going to buy into it. So they need to improve the feature, not eliminate it. So that's why if I need another TV, I'm buying a C1 G1. So I cannot recommend it enough. There's no other TV that I much rather buy right now. Again, money not being a problem. If money was out of the conversation, I would have all the TVs, regardless. I would buy an S95C. I would buy a Samsung LCD. I would buy a Sony. I would have all the TVs if money was not a consideration for me. Okay. I would still play on the C1. I am 100% sure I would still play on the C1 with OLED Motion Pro. Why? Because the motion clarity of those TVs are not going to come even close. They are not going to come even close. So after you see that clarity, when you are panning the camera, especially when you play with a controller, after you see this clarity, when you're panning the camera with your controller, after you see that, there's no going back. I cannot turn that off. And I like HDR. And we're going to talk about the HDR settings now. I love HDR. It looks fantastic. But I cannot get that motion clarity on HDR. Okay? So HDR is awesome. But for me, the perfect display has to have that. Because even if it's sample on hold, 360 hertz, which is going to look better in motion on the C1, then I need 360 FPS. And we don't have asynchronous reprojection yet. We don't have DLSS3, quadrupling the frame rate. Okay, so we cannot get that level of performance with the picture quality at 4K that I would like to see, or even using, upscaling. So yeah, that's my answer there. Let's see what else we have. Chris D. Rufus, if you care about 120 hertz BFI, go for the C1. Could be your last chance to buy brand new OLED with this feature. Sad but true. Yeah, I don't know how good is that feature on the Philips TVs. I know the Philips, all the TVs from the C1 year, WRGB OLEDs, they are supposed to have the feature. So I'm not sure how good is the feature with other brands. It might be awesome. I just don't know. But I do know the C1. And I do know that you can make it look amazing. And that's the thing. You might get an LCD with better motion clarity, but the picture quality is not going to be even close. So yeah, I definitely recommend the C1 because of that. Just exclusively because of that. But now, for a PS5, it's not going to make a big difference. So I would not recommend you. If you are on a PS5, if you are using a console, I would recommend you to try. I haven't tested this myself, but I would recommend you to try a QD OLED from Samsung. And the reason is they have low input lag motion interpolation. Okay. So it's like 20, 30 milliseconds, something like that, of input lag. That's very good. And I was talking with Gaming Tech the other day, and he was telling me that he was absolutely loving that motion interpolation at 60 FPS of the Samsung S95C. He was telling me that thing is amazing because you can get 120 FPS delivered to your screen, okay, on HDR without losing brightness. So for the PS5, I would take a look at Samsung because you can get that low latency motion interpolation. For me, 60 FPS, I have to use black from insertion or motion interpolation. But the problem is if you use motion interpolation with these LG OLEDs, then the input lag is terrible. It's almost unusable for some games. So Samsung, with that option, with that feature, is definitely something to consider, in my opinion. But I haven't tested it myself. but from what I've heard, it seems to be pretty good. So Chris D says, Roof, if you okay, we got that question already. I found that the A90J has 120 hertz BF5 feature. So is that so it has a C1 panel? Yeah, that'll be test it, test the settings. So what you have to do is try to get all the brightness you can to use that feature, and test what is the motion clarity. Open the UFO test at 120 FPS, 120 hertz. Use the feature and change the speed of the test to 360 pixels per second, 240 pixels per second, 360 pixels per second, and 480 pixels per second, and see if you can see the alien eyes perfectly sharp. If you can see the alien eyes perfectly sharp, then that's, for example, if you can see it perfectly sharp at 120 and not higher, then it looks like 120, like a 120 hertz 4K display. If it's at 360, then it looks like a 360. On the C1, for example, at 360 pixels per second, the pupils of the alien don't look perfectly sharp, but they look better than 2 pixels of motion blur, significantly better. So it's very close to 360 at 360 hertz OLED experience. Okay, so we're not talking about LCDs. If you compare that with an LCD, that's going to blow out of the water any 360 hertz LCD. The LG C1 with AutoMotion Pro High looks significantly better because there's no ghosting, no crosstalk, no gray to gray limitations there. That there's clean, it's perfectly clean. And it looks perfect no matter where you are on the screen. It looks the same if you are here, 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 up, down. It doesn't matter. It looks clean all the way. That's why it is so amazing. So definitely, I would love to be able to get my hands on all the TVs that have the feature, the 120 BF5 feature, and tweak the settings so I can share that. That would be awesome. If I can, partner with other YouTube channels that have these TVs, and we can work together to figure out the settings so I can share that with everyone, that would be awesome. I would love to do that. Even when I don't have those TVs, I just to make more people use the feature, because people don't use the feature because it looks dark and the picture quality is just not good enough. So if you can make it look good, and now you give it a shot, you will see that you cannot turn that off. And you might be even encouraged to upgrade your PC just to get 120 frames per second rock solid, so you can use the feature. Let's see. Manhim, yo, how's it going? Do you use the C1 as monitor every day? Yes. I don't do a work on the C1. But yeah, I use it as a monitor, as a PC monitor every day. I Alan Card 1988. I reduce SDR slider to 50% because at max out looks washed out in most games, using HGIG and fine-tune dark areas at -18. That's why. That's why it looks washed out. So let me explain. And we're going to jump. Let me go back to the stream. Wait, I lost the shot. Give me a moment. Yeah, we're gonna jump to HDR settings in a moment. Let me go back to the video. I click. Okay. I click on my mouse here, the back button, by accident, and I back out of the video. Remember, this is the first live stream I do with this setup. So this is the second live stream. The first one I did it with my phone. Let me see, how can I get back to this? Okay, I got the shot again. Okay, I got it. Okay. Why do I see my face the other way? Huh. Okay, let me fix this technical issue here. Because I missed the real-time view I was having. I don't see it in real time anymore. Okay, let's just deal with it. So what was the okay, what I was gonna say is the difference between the SDR for the SDR HDR trick on Windows. The difference between fine-tune dark areas and lowering the black level with a black level setting. You don't want to use fine-tune dark areas because fine-tune dark areas only affects the lower end of the grayscale. In my testing, up to 30%. And the problem on Windows, when you are using SDR inside HDR, you have all the SDR content is limited. So you want to affect the entire grayscale, not just the lower end of the grayscale. So if you only lower the fine-tune dark areas, the picture is going to look washed out because you're not moving everything. You need to move the entire grayscale. Okay, so use the black level setting. Use that screen brightness on the C1 or black level on the C2, C3. That's a much better option. So if you try the settings I recommended, that doesn't look, it's not gonna look washed out. Now on your own TV, you might need to test that the black level is the same. So what I am recommending is crushing exactly the same that I am recommending to crush. That's why I explain you should use a test pattern, force limited, see how much you're crushing, and then go back to full, and then lower the black level until you crush the same thing. And in that way, you're going to move the entire picture, and it's not gonna look washed out. So don't use the fine-tuned dark areas for the SDR HDR trick. The fine-tuned dark areas is the best to fix the native HDR game. So we're gonna talk about that. Let me try to catch up with the comments about SDR, what I talked about at the beginning. Okay, let's see. SDR slider 50%. Also need to adjust fine-tune dark areas to 13 using black test pattern. Sorry for my bad English. Yeah, it's the same comment that I answered. Laser Shark. I understand that some people see flickering on BFI 60, but is it still noticeable at 120 hertz? Not for me. So again, I cannot say that no one will ever notice any flickering using OLED Motion Pro High on the C1 at 100 or 120. I cannot say that because the Blurbuster chief told me that it depends on the person. But I bet that most people are not gonna be able to tell that there is any flickering whatsoever at 100 or 120. It is just, even if you have a full white picture, it looks so stable. It doesn't look flickering. Now, some people might be able to feel that there is flickering, but you're not gonna see it. So you're not gonna see it on the clouds on the game like at 60. You see that they are flashing, that they look flickering. You might see that. You might see that at 60, but at 100 or 120, you're not gonna see it for sure. I mean, I cannot say for sure again, but highly unlikely. There are some people that are not able to see the motion clarity improvement. They are like blind to motion clarity. That also exists. Okay. So it depends on the person, but very unlikely. The difference is very, 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 very big. Like at 100, I use 100 OLED Motion Pro high most of the time, and it looks perfect. But if it flickers, if you try medium on the C1, medium looks even less. I mean, medium is not gonna flicker for sure. Almost very, very unlikely medium is gonna flicker. And medium doubles the motion clarity. So you can try that. Highly recommended. It's absolutely amazing on the C1. It's the reason why I recommend the C1. I mean, the main reason, of course. Penumbrum says, I tried Dolby Vision on Andromeda and Need for Speed Heat on the PC, but both are awful. Limitations like Andromeda needs to be capped at 60 hertz, or Need for Speed completely locks up my PC, sometimes with HDR on. So you have to cap the frame rate on Mass Effect Andromeda to the refresh rate to 60 on the PC to use Dolby Vision. Man, by the way, I played Mass Effect Andromeda when I was in Cuba, and that's why I don't have it here on the US. And I'm not buying that game. I already played it. And when I played that in Cuba, I didn't have anything. I played that on a 720p LCD screen with a 1050 Ti. So yeah, um, I would like to test it. Maybe I'll give it a try with Need for Speed. So you're saying that Need for Speed supports Dolby Vision on the PC. If it looks awful, it doesn't matter anyway. But why it looks awful? Because it looks washed out. You see the black level rays, the colors. It looks too dark. Why it looks awful exactly? Do you know why? Do you know what's going on? If you lower the black level, do you see that looking better, or is it too dark? What's the problem with it? Please dive in more into Dolby Vision in future videos, says Kevin Swart. I don't have any Dolby Vision content. That's the problem. I don't have any. I don't watch anything. So you see, I had a job before, and with that job, I had everything. I have HBO, all the streaming services maxed out. I had all the channels, all the televisions, everything available to me, and I never use it. So I'm not gonna pay for any of that because I don't watch any content. I just play games. Because when I was in Cuba, I had to decide, okay, do I play games on my crappy PC or do I watch a movie? And that was an easier decision. So sometimes watching a movie was a better experience. But now here in the US, that I have a high-end gaming PC with this nice LG C1 OLED, watching a movie is never a better experience to me. So it is only like a very specific movies that I really want to watch that I might watch it. But I'm not gonna pay for any streaming services because I'm not gonna use it. I'm playing the games all the time. So I don't know how to test Dolby Vision. I would need to get a specific video in Dolby Vision for testing, but it's gonna be a waste of money. I'm not gonna use it. I'm not gonna. So yeah, well, I'll see. I'll see what I can do. See if what's going on. But the thing with Dolby Vision is that it is very specific to the TVs. So Dolby Vision might look good on the C1, it might be broken on the C3. It's just all over the place. From what I've seen from reviews, Dolby Vision is very inconsistent. When the goal of Dolby Vision is to to have like a consistent experience regardless of the display, and they are not accomplishing that with the mess that they have. So yeah, but I'll see what I can do to see if I learn about Dolby Vision. Redemption says gamers need to hear the hard truth and get healthy. Without health, you have nothing. Yeah, there are a lot of gamers that are just playing all day and they don't exercise. That's bad. That's all I'm gonna say about that. I mean, you need to move. You need to move, man. You cannot be playing on the couch all day long. You need to do something. Doing exercise and eating well is gonna help a lot. Okay, if you eat well and you don't exercise, that's That's better than exercising and eating very bad. But exercising is amazing. Everyone should do something. Even if you don't have time, do what I do. Just go do one set of pull-ups and call it a day. It's very good. Let's see. Mo Williams says, oh, wait, I got another question. Alexandros21. I have an OLED C1. You have any settings for switch? SDR settings? The last settings that I shared were SDR settings. So all the SDR settings that I share work on the Nintendo Switch. Now with the Nintendo Switch OLED, there is HDR, but I am not sure if that works. If you connect it to an HDR capable display, it should. What is the max CLL of the Switch games? I don't know. I'm gonna ask Marcus Gaming Tech. I think he has a Switch. I'm not sure if he tested that already. But yeah, for the Nintendo Switch, try the SDR settings that I shared. And more than trying the settings, the reason why I'm making this video is so you test it yourself. When I share the settings, I explain you why. Test it yourself, because maybe on your TV, the numbers might be slightly different. Instead of 55, it might be 56. Get what I'm saying? The black level might be a slightly different, so you need to test it. For example, the C3 and G3, based on the reviews, it seems like they are crushing blacks. For example, you can fix that with a 22-point calibration. I show you how to do that. And you can test with a near black test pattern to make sure you can see the entire near black test pattern. So that's what I want to raise awareness about. So you test the settings yourself more than just copy the settings. It's more important that you are able to do it yourself. M. Sosa, hello, my friend. How are you doing? This will not make sense, but this is what I see. Anti-aliasing increases the blur when moving the camera. Motion blur smoothes the image in a good way if it's right implemented. I'm playing GTA 5 with all AA off and motion blur on half. It feels good to me. When I use it, that's all it matters, if it feels good to you. GTA has a messed up anti-aliasing. The anti-aliasing of GTA 5 is so messed up that GTA 5 looks better on the PS5 aliasing wise than on the PC. Even if you max out MSAA, 8x, 4K, whatever you want, you still have aliasing. And on the PS5, it looks better based on the reviews and the things that I've seen. I don't have a PS5 to test it, but based on the Digital Foundry basically is what I'm talking about here. So I saw their video and they say that the anti-aliasing is better. So GTA 5 is not a good example, but if you turn off anti-aliasing completely, you want to get, you want to increase the resolution and use, for example, use NVIDIA DLSR, Deep Learning Super Resolution. And if you have the horsepower for that, just get it, the pixel density as high as possible, and that's gonna look the best. And the LDSR actually reduces the aliasing. It has anti-aliasing on it, and you have a slider. At the default is at 33%. So if you increase that slider a little bit, the image becomes softer, but you get a little bit more anti-aliasing. But I just leave it at 33%, and sometimes I lower it below 33%, especially on my plasma TV. But motion blur might be useful for 30 FPS, 30 hertz, because to reduce the stutter, basically. Because 30 FPS, 30 hertz looks like this. It looks too stuttery, okay? So motion blur might blur that out. And it might make 30 FPS be similar to 60, but blurrier, see? But aside from that, I don't see any other usage for motion blur. And 30 FPS sucks anyway. It's terrible. It doesn't matter what you do with it. You need more frames. 30 FPS is unacceptable, especially on these high-end consoles. Again, Starfield for me, 30 FPS on the Xbox, that's dead on arrival. I'm sorry, it's just a failure. It's just not acceptable for a first-person shooter. 30 FPS. It's just a very high level of incompetence. It's just terrible. So yeah, motion blur for 60 FPS or 120. I don't like it, but if you like it, go for it. That's all it matters. If you like it, that's all it matters. So okay, let's see what else we have. Redemption. What games are you looking forward to this year? Oh, a lot of games. A lot of games. Starting with Lords of the Fallen. Lords of the Fallen. I hope it performs well. Okay. Because I beat the first one, Lords of the Fallen, and that game looked very good. For its time, I was impressed. The particle effects, the clarity of the game. I liked the animations, the combat animations and the way everything was feeling grounded. I enjoyed that game a lot. Okay. It was not, the best Souls game or anything like that. The level design was not even close to, Dark Souls 1 or even, any Dark Souls game. But I enjoyed that game. I liked it a lot, and I am really looking forward to that Lords of the Fallen on Unreal Engine 5. And I wish the performance is very good and it looks fantastic. It seems like it looks very, very good. So I hope that game looks amazing. I also want to play Ratchet and Clank, which is here. So and that game looks very good on HDR. So I hope that they didn't, mess it up for the PC. And I hope it doesn't look washed out. It looks amazing, amazing colors, and everything looks fantastic for HDIG. I don't see why not. I don't see why not. So I'm gonna play Ratchet and Clank. It's not my favorite kind of game, but I think I'm really going to enjoy it. And of course, I'm gonna try it with all emotion because I see it's a very dynamic game. You're moving all the time, especially when you go on those ramps and you're moving across the world. Like on Fortnite, I made a video on the Kuro. I was playing Fortnite, going on the ramps and circling around, and that showcases the motion clarity very nice because everything is moving all the time. You're on those ramps, so I think I'm going to enjoy the visual quality of Ratchet and Clank. So the games that I enjoy are Souls-like games mostly. I do play some first-person shooters, especially if they have a good story. I like them, but I don't. I am not into competitive games, especially because I like to play with a controller. And the reason why I prefer to play with a controller is because when I was in Cuba, I played with a mouse only, and I always wanted to have a controller to get the vibrations and all of that. So now that I can have a controller, that's what I like to use. And I like the dual sense features. When a game supports the dual sense feature, I really enjoy that quality, those quality vibrations and the sound and the adaptive triggers. So I really enjoyed that. So I hope Ratchet and Clanks brings all of that to the table. So I'm looking forward to that. And we have many other Souls. Like I like that Lies of P. I like I like it. I played the demo. I like that game. Uh, I like those Souls like games. I am of course looking forward to some of those Ubisoft games. So that Avatar game, I see that some people are saying that's gonna be like Far Cry, but I don't think so. I don't think so. That's gonna be different. I think that game, I believe, is going to be amazing. Based on what I've seen, just the world looks insane. Looks very, very good. So now, the reason why I am optimistic with that game is because Avatar from Ubisoft, I'm talking about, it is using the Snowdrop engine, and that engine looks fantastic to me. I love how the Division 2 looks. Very, very good, especially the textures. It is so much. I mean, the texture density, all the quality of the assets on the game is just absolutely amazing. And that's what you need for Avatar. And I think that game's just gonna look insane, man. And it is something that I've been waiting for so long because I love the Avatar movie. Okay. with 24 frames per second, even 48 frames per second HFR. It's not enough. And I always wanted to experience that world, with good motion clarity. Okay, so I think that that game is just gonna be amazing. I'm gonna love that game, and also that Star Wars game that they announced seems to be very interesting. Um, I didn't like the gameplay too much. It was looking stiff, in my opinion. It was looking, in terms of the gameplay, the gunshots and the movements and the cover system. It was looking rough, in my opinion. I didn't like that, but the graphics look very nice, and it seems like it's going to be, you know, big. It's gonna be big. Ubisoft, they focus on making it big. So the thing is, are they going to make it interesting? That's the thing. So yeah, many games I'm looking forward to this year. Well, some of those games are not gonna come out this year, but they announced it. And Fable might be good, but they didn't show anything. So I don't know if that game's gonna be good or not. But Playground, Forza Horizon 5 looks very good. So I hope that Fable looks very good too, because they're gonna use the same technology. So I'm optimistic with Fable. It's not gonna come this year, I don't believe so. Uh, so yeah, a Starfield, I am not excited about it. I'm telling you that much. I'm very pessimistic about a Starfield. That's gonna look like crap. The performance is gonna be trash. These developers have absolutely no clue about picture quality when they show a trailer that looks washed out on SDR, black level race on SDR. It's just insane. How can you work so hard and spend so much money on a game, and you're going to show the advertisement with such a terrible picture quality? It just blows my mind. So I am very pessimistic about Starfield. Well, let's see what happens. Let me jump to another question, because I can be talking about that forever. The only big Eric Thomas, he says the only big advantage of plasma is that it is 1080p 60 hertz and can max the graphics on everything all the time, also motion clarity. Yeah, so the plasma at 60 fps can have 4 milliseconds of persistence. So it can look almost like 240 hertz display at 60, and the flickering is almost, for me, is significantly less noticeable than 60 fps with Auto Motion Pro High on the LG C1. So, and it also looks very natural. It looks like a Pixar movie in terms of the aliasing. When you use DLSS, use DLDSR in combination with DLSS, you get like perfect anti-aliasing, and it looks very good. It looks very, very, very good. The colors are awesome, self-emissive, very good black levels. I love the plasma TVs. I really, really enjoy it. It is not better than my LG C1 in almost. It doesn't have better motion clarity. It doesn't have higher brightness, better contrast. But yeah, the colors are nice, and I like it. I like the plasma technology, and for the price, you cannot beat that. Penumbrum says, honestly, I didn't bother to analyze the picture quality of Dolby Vision just due to the refresh rate cap and the constant locking up my PC and weird screen colors in heat. I just gave up on it. Yeah, it's just sad, man. These games should look a lot better than on these TVs. It should look so much better, but they don't care, because most people don't have a nice display like this to play games. So they make these games for the majority, and they don't pay attention to these things because they have bigger problems to resolve, basically. So he also says I believe another issue with heat is even when you turn HDR off in Windows, it still tries to force Dolby Vision when booting up and requires you to delete the settings folder each time to fix it. What a mess. Alexandros21, he says, he's answering the question. He's answering somebody else. Simon Hoshok, thank you as always for your time today and the great live stream. Take care, sir, and all the very best. Well, take care, Simon. I appreciate you. So let's jump on HDR. We're caught up with the questions, with the comments. Let's jump to HDR, and we are almost 2 hours in. So I'm going to end with this, and then I'm just going to read some questions before I wrap this up. So what about HDR? If you get a fancy, great display, great TV, you want to use HDR all the time. You don't want to use SDR for anything. HDR looks better all the time. I see time and time again some people in the comments in other places too, some people saying, "Oh, SDR wins again." No. Or that SDR is better. No way. Never. SDR will never, under any circumstance, look better than HDR. It's that simple. HDR gives you a higher contrast, more brightness. The brighter, the better. More colorful picture. It is just the superior experience. And to get one of these expensive displays to use SDR is a shame. So my recommendation is figure out how to change the settings so you can get the best out of your display and enjoy HDR. Okay. So now what happens on HDR? That the games look bad. The games look washed out because they have the black level rays. Okay. And the other thing you need to tweak on your TV is the tone mapping settings if you have the options. So now, how can you know what is that you need to change on your TV to fix HDR? You need to know what is the black level control setting of your TV. If you don't have black level control setting on your TV on the regular menu, you might have that setting on the service menu. So for example, the Samsung S95C, it has like a shadows option that you can lower or increase. And it has an EOTF option. That's not gonna fix it. So I am not sure, but I bet it has the black level control on the service menu. Okay. And this is something that I was talking about with Gaming Tech the other day, because he made a video. It was about Lies of P or Diablo 4, I believe. I don't remember which game it was, that it had a terrible black level race. And he said on the video, I don't recommend anyone with a Samsung TV to play this game on HDR. Why? Because you cannot fix it. So if you cannot lower the black level, it's gonna look terrible. It doesn't matter how good the TV is. It doesn't matter if you're using a reference monitor. So what we need to figure out is if you have that black level control on the service menu. Okay. So that's it. So after you get that black level setting on your TV, Philips, Sony, like most TV have a black level setting control. Once you figure out what that setting is, follow my recommendation to lower it to crush exactly what I recommend. So when I open the near black test pattern, for example, I share a video. I'm gonna share that again. I'll see if I update the comments. Not the description of this video, and I'm going to add all the test patterns that I share for calibration. So, for example, this video that I share from the beginning to calibrate the near black, I said, okay, you crush the blacks until you can see, these columns, 8 columns counting from the right. If the game is double limited on Windows, or if the game is limited one time, then you just want to lower the black level until you can barely see the entire near black test pattern. So the way you can test this on your own TV is force limited. Yeah, full on the GPU, force limited on the TV, see how much you're crushing, then go back to full, then lower the black level until you crush the same thing. So now your TV might be crushing out of the box. So if you do that, maybe you are going to lower it more than what you need to lower it if your TV is crushing. Okay, or if your TV has black level rays out of the box, maybe you need to crush that even more. So follow my recommendation. I'm gonna have a link in the description of the video where I show specifically the test pattern so you can see it and you can adjust it to get the same visibility near black. If you do that, if you lower the black level of your TV, those games on HDR that look washed out, the colors look washed out, they're gonna look perfect. But you need to lower the entire grayscale. You cannot use well, in the case of HDR, you can use fine-tune dark areas, and it is actually recommended. But if you're using like an SDR HDR trick, that you want to lower the entire grayscale. So that's the most important thing. You need to get that black level perfect. Okay, it needs to be perfectly tuned. After you get that black level perfectly tuned, now the other thing is you need to understand the tone mapping of your display. Do you have tone mapping options at all? What is the tone mapping target of your display? Do you have HGIG on your display, which is basically no tone mapping? What is the maximum peak brightness of your display? You need to know that. You need to learn that. And then you want to have the content give you the brightness that your display needs to do that tone mapping. Okay. Or the other way, if you cannot change the content, then see if your display can change the tone mapping. So now the LG OLEDs are the best for that because you have the option to change the tone mapping by accessing the HDMI signaling override secret menu, 111311. When you step on select mode, you can change mastering peak max CLL to do tone mapping. If you have a game that has a max CLL of 3000 nits and you cannot change it, then you want to use tone mapping off and you want to use 3000 nits mastering peak max CLL. So the TV is going to tone map accordingly to the content. And the reason why we have to change those settings manually is because it doesn't work. Okay, those settings don't change automatically when you connect it to a PC or a console. They only work automatically when you're using the internal apps. Okay, for some reason there's no communication there. For some reason the TV is not able to, it's not receiving that metadata, or it's not able to read the metadata. So you need to change it manually. Okay, but now if you have a TV that doesn't have those options, you need to understand what is the tone mapping that your TV is doing. Is it 1500 nits? Is it 1000, 800, 600, 700? And you need to, if possible, adjust the game sliders, the peak brightness slider to the game, to that tone mapping. And that's it. So for HDR, it depends a lot on the display and the options that you have available. But you want to definitely master the black level setting. What is that black level setting or settings that you have on your TV? What are they doing? And the way you can understand what they're doing is by using near black test patterns. And you can find those on YouTube. I'm going to share some here in the description of the video after the stream ends. I'm going to share some of those. So master the near black. That's a must to get the better quality. Understand the tone mapping of your display. What is the target? What is the maximum brightness of my display? Is my display doing tone mapping? What is the target? 4000 nits, 1500 nits, 2000 nits? What is the target? Can I change it or not? Okay. And you need to study your own display to get the best quality. And that's how it goes. So let me know if you have any questions. I think we've done 2 hours already. So I want to wrap it up here. Let me see. I think the stream is out of sync. Let me open it on my phone to see if it looks better, if I can see the questions better. Because since I lost the real time thing, I don't see it in the same way anymore. But yeah, I'm gonna end the stream here. Okay, let's see what else we have. I'm looking forward to some of the games you mentioned also, and I agree with you on Starfield. I enjoy single player horror games the most. Okay, sounds good. So yeah, we've done 2 hours already. Let me know in the comments of this live stream if you have any questions. I'm gonna have the description of this video full of links so you can download test patterns and study your own displays. All displays you have, study them. What are the settings doing? Watch my videos. And the most important thing to take out of them is not the specific settings that I'm sharing, because those settings might be right or they might look wrong on your TV, or it might not be the same. But the important part is that I am explaining, I'm sharing with you why. What's my criteria? Why am I making those changes? See, do the same. Give it a try on your own displays, and you'll get a better experience. It's that simple. So yeah, thank you for all of you here, and you all have a great rest of the day. I'm going to stop the streaming now. Let me see, how can I do that here? Okay.